So welcome back again to the series of webinar with Dr. Donald Martin. And we already had the first part of undergraduate application process. So where we had discussed in detail the basic part of the resume part of it, the extracurricular activities and all. And today we are going to have the second part, which is going to be very, very critical part of this webinar series. As you may be knowing, those who are already attended that, Dr. Donald Martin is one of the very prominent educationists. He was admissions dean at the Columbia University, which is Ivy League, and Booth School of Business, University of Chicago. The USNEWS this year has ranked the University of Chicago Booth School as the #1 institute in the United States. He was also working with Northwestern University, Wheaton College, and have the vast experience. He himself was evaluating the student profiles and admitting the students, and over a period of time, more than 125,000 applications he himself has evaluated. He know in and out of how the applications are evaluated, and that is why we will be in the best position to groom the students. Since 2008, he has been independently working, and now last 10 years, our students has been tremendously benefited for the association. So we are working together to really guide the students. He's also writing a lot of articles. He has taken on to many webinars in the different institutions, universities. More than 60 countries he's been going on speaking tour. And it is really our fortunate we are getting such a great personality to address about undergraduate. And we are also having the graduate students, so bachelors and masters, both the students to this. So with this type of webinars, which comes from purely from the experience, you will not find such a great depths and the tips what the Dr. Donald Martin can offer you. So once he will cover the complete webinar, you are free to ask any questions. Please type the questions in question answer tab, and Dr. Donald Martin will be very happy to take the questions. So over to you, Dr. Donald Martin. Please take care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Diorris. Hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be back with you again. For those of you who've been listening to some of our other presentations, welcome back. And for those of you who are tuning in today for the first time, welcome to you. We're thrilled to have you here. I have so enjoyed my association with Dr. Diorris and the Astute team over these past 10 years. It has just been phenomenal. And we've had a chance to work together with many of the students that Astute works with in such a wonderful way. And so it's a pleasure for me and an honor to be here and to be asked to present this series of webinars on the undergraduate application process. I'd briefly like to introduce my colleague, Ms. Deborah. I almost called her doctor because someday she's going to be one, I'm sure. But at any rate, Ms. Deborah's here with me again today, as she has been on our prior webinars. And you're going to be hearing a little bit more from her down the road as we begin to work more closely with individual students and perhaps do some webinars in the coming months. But I just wanted you to know she is here once again. Deborah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hello, Dr. Dunn and everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we've got a lot to discuss. And as you probably have gathered, if you've been listening to some of our former presentations, I'm very excited today to be talking about another very, very critical part of the application process. Most of my comments today will be pretty much focused on preparing your personal statements and essays. As Dr. Diorris has so wisely observed and mentioned in the past, due to the fact that many undergraduate institutions are starting to place less emphasis on things like the SAT or the ACT. They may still ask for it, but some of them aren't. Some of them are making it optional, or they're not asking for these scores at all. And as a result of that, one of the areas of the application, which was already important, but is going to become more important, will be the preparation and execution of outstanding personal statements and essays. And what I'm going to do today is present to you 10 tips. I don't believe you'll hear these anywhere else. And some of them may seem very simplistic to you, but I'm telling you, they make a difference. And we're going to spend a majority of our time talking about essays today. We're also going to spend some time discussing, addressing some potential weaknesses in your application. We're going to talk about the application interview. If you are asked to do an interview, sometimes undergraduate applicants get the opportunity to do this. I want to share a few tips, and then maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because you haven't even submitted your applications yet, but I do want to talk about what happens if instead of being admitted, you are placed on a waiting list or you would be denied admission. What does that mean? This happened to me. I was denied admission my first time as a PhD candidate, but it worked out very, very well. It was not the end by any means. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. Then a few closing remarks, a few comments about Ms. Deborah and I and how we have been working with a student and look forward to continuing that this year. Then the most important part of this whole thing, your questions. As you know, if you've heard me before, I love questions. There are no bad questions. There are no dumb questions. They're all important. If you want to know about it, then it's important. And I'll do my best to answer the questions that you ask. So please, as we go through the presentation, please write your questions down in the Q&A box on this platform. There's a place to do that. And as we go along, if a question comes to your mind about something I say or something I may not say, I want you to ask. Please ask any questions you wish, okay? Now let's start with the very first item at the top of this page here. Something, as you know, if you've been listening to me before, I cover in every single webinar I ever give, because in my opinion, this is so critical. What is the biggest mistake that prospective college students make? What is it? What is this that you do? I'm going to give you about 5 seconds or 7 seconds. I'm going to just be quiet here for a minute. If I were asking you this question in person and you were to respond to me and I said, what do you think is the biggest mistake prospective college students make? And this happens every year in India, in the United States, in Asia, in Europe, in South America, in Africa. It happens all around the world. What do you think it is? Well, for those of you who've been listening, you know what this next slide is going to say. But for those who don't, here we go. The biggest mistake prospective college students make every year is not doing adequate research before they apply. This is so sad, but it's so common. Many applicants make an assumption that the only 1 or 2 areas they need to think about when they're deciding where to apply is a ranking or the endorsement of someone, a friend, a family member, an advisor. Now, I'm not suggesting that rankings or word of mouth, as I like to call it, are not useful. But I am suggesting that if that's the only way you are doing any research on the programs you're thinking about for your undergraduate education, I believe you're making a big mistake. And really, there's no excuse to make this mistake anymore. There's such a wealth of information, free information out there about every college and university, certainly in the United States, if not around the world. So remember, when you begin thinking about where you're going to apply, even if you're thinking about this for next year, it's still not too late. Your perception about the institutions you're considering is where you end up after you've done your homework, after you've done your research, not before you ever start. Many people that I speak with have done no research at all. They already have their list of schools, but if I were to ask them, tell me about the class size of your institution, that you're thinking about. Tell me about the faculty-student ratio. Tell me about the campus. Tell me about student life. Tell me about what some students or graduates have told you about this program. They have nothing to tell me. They have no answers. They've just decided somehow that this is the place they're going to apply without knowing anything about it. Please, at least take a virtual campus tour. Please reach out to one or two current students or recent graduates to ask them, what did they think of this program? What did they like about it? What didn't they like about it? Would they do it again? Now knowing what they know, would they choose this program again? You could get some extremely helpful information this way. For those of my students who do this, many of them change their list of priorities. They reorganize them because I just spoke with someone yesterday, just a student yesterday, who's in the process of doing research, and they attended a few information sessions. Many institutions have online information sessions for students. They attended several of these. And do you know what? Already one of the top schools, and if I told you the name of this institution, you would recognize it. It's one of the top 10 in the United States. It's off their list. They're not applying because of what happened during that information session. This is huge. Please, please, please take the time you need to do this is your education, no one else's. Nobody else is going to go to college for you, but you. So you owe it to yourself to take some time to do what? Do your research. Okay, now let's move to talking about one of the most, you've done your research, you know where you're applying, you're starting to complete your applications, maybe you've already worked on some of them. What is most important to you as you work on your applications? Well, there are 3 parts of the application. I shared this last time, over which you probably have the most control. And they are your resume, as you prepare that, your recommendation, who you choose to do recommendation letters for you and how they do them is critical, and your personal statements and essays. On July 11th, 2 weeks ago, when we did this session, part 1 of the application process, among other things, we talked about resumes and recommendation letters. Today, among other things, as you've seen, we're going to talk about personal statements and essays. And as I said, the most amount of time I'm going to spend in this presentation today is talking about your essays. And I'm going to give you 10 tips. Okay, are you ready? You got your pencils or pens ready, or your computer ready to take some notes? I hope so. And don't forget, as we go through these, if something comes up in your mind, you have a question, write it down in the Q&A box. Okay, here we go. Tip number 1 for preparing personal statements and essays. Please allow enough time to work on these. Don't rush this. Don't wait till a month before your deadline to try to get these ready. If the longer you wait, and I realize you're very busy, many students in high school are doing a lot. They're very busy, and they're doing wonderful things, but they're busy. But this is something, your essays are too important to let go until the last minute. They need to be prepared early on so you have a chance to really look at them, hone them, refine them, turn them into the best essay that you can before you push that submit button and send it in. And if you wait until the last minute, there is a greater chance that you're going to make some mistakes. And most of them, they're unintentional, but they're also avoidable. You wouldn't have to make them. So this may seem very reasonable to you already, but please don't let the time slip by that you're not spending enough quality time working on preparing your essays. Okay, tip number 2. There's a 2-part to this tip. Please follow directions. I shouldn't have to say this, but I do, because thousands of undergraduate and graduate school applicants every year. I don't know what happens to them, but they don't follow directions. Let's say in your essay, for your essay, you are asked 3 questions. Why do you want to pursue an undergraduate degree in this field? Why do you want to study with us? And what are your short and long-term goals? Let's say that's the prompt for one of your essays. Well, then you have 3 questions to answer. And you want to be sure that you give adequate time to each of those questions, that the committee knows that you answered. And this is another very important tip. Please, let's just say it's Northwestern University, and they asked you those 3 questions. Why do you want to pursue the field of study you're in? Why do you want to study at Northwestern? What are your short and long-term goals? You need to answer them in that order and in the order that they're asked. You don't, and please make sure you answer each one of them. Also, I wish I didn't have to say this all the time, but for some reason, it seems like applicants do not look at the word limit for essays, or if they do, they don't necessarily think it's that important. And if they're asked to submit a 500-word essay, they'll submit a 1,000-word essay. Now, obviously, if you have a 500-word limit and you go over that by 5 or 10 words, that's fine. That they're not going to count it to the word. But this is part of how you can demonstrate that you can follow directions. If this is, some applicants think, well, I can't give everything I want to give them in 500 words. Maybe that's true, but you were asked to submit 500 words. That's what you submit. You follow directions in that way. So once again, answer all the questions, give equal time if there's more than one question in your essay, answer them in the order in which they were asked, and please stick to the word limit. Follow your directions, okay? Tip number 3. I often believe that it is helpful if you first, before you start writing, create an outline of what you want to cover in this essay. That's one way to ensure that you don't miss anything, that you don't forget to put something in that they're asking you to address. Create an outline. You could just, and in the beginning, it doesn't have to be in the order in which you're actually going to write. Just put whatever comes to your mind, whatever, just put some bullet points down. And then once you think you've gotten on paper everything you might want to cover in that essay, then you can organize it in a more, in the way in which you might actually want to discuss it. But again, just don't worry about what initially comes to your mind. Don't worry about that. Just write it down. You can take something off later. You could remove something and say, you know what, I don't think I need that. I don't think I'm going to talk about that. But for this purpose, don't stop yourself at this point. Write anything down and then create your actual organized outline, what you're going to say in a cogent manner. And you might, as I said, you might delete something. And then once you have it in the final order that you're going to have it, you still might reorganize it again. This is all before you ever start writing. This can be very helpful so that you can kind of think through what it is you want to cover and make sure you're giving enough attention to each of the questions you've been asked. Tip number 4. Now, where it's appropriate, maybe you'd like to start off with a quote, a famous quote, or not so famous, but a quote that means something to you. Some of you who've heard me in prior webinars, I use a quote sometimes when I talk about the importance of being yourself in the application process. Oscar Wilde, a fairly famous philosopher, said, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." I happen to like that quote, and I do use it sometimes where appropriate. If you think that starting off your essay in answering the questions that you would like to ask, it would be nice to have a quote, go for it. I think that's a great idea. Or maybe there's a story that you would like to tell about something about your life, a compelling story. These kinds of things tend to bring in the reader to your personal statement. Now, let's say you have some other questions on the application, maybe some short answer questions. How did you hear about us? Or is there anything else you'd like us to know about your application? Or tell us about a time that you really learned a valuable lesson. There are occasions where it is okay to repeat all or part of that question in your response. If you're asked what your short and long-term goals are, you can say, shortly after I graduate, here's what I'd like to do. And my long-term goal is this. Or if they're asking, tell us about a lesson you learned, you could start off by saying, a major lesson I learned is or was. It's appropriate on occasion to repeat part of the question in your answer if you like to. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But you do want to try and start off with something that will be a little bit of a tease to the reader, will be, as we say in the United States, a carrot to the reader, to draw them in, to capture their attention, to get them to really want to start reading your essay. Excuse me just a moment. I'm going to just grab a drink of water here. Okay, tip number 5. Oh, my word. This is so critical. The readers of your essays, ladies and gentlemen, need to hear whose voice? Your voice. Not your teacher's voice, not your parents' voice, not your advisor's voice, not a coach. No. They need to hear your voice. You're the one that they're looking at, not anybody else. And one of the ways you can best do this is, as you are imagining this essay, pretend you're sitting in a room and you're speaking out loud with them. You're answering this question out loud. They need, when I work with Dr. DeOris and the Astute team, oftentimes and this year, Ms. Deborah and I will be doing this. We will be evaluating your essays if you so request us to do this. Our goal when we do that is to help you prepare the best essay, in your voice, not ours. This is your essay, and you never want to sacrifice the uniqueness of who you are. There's only one person who can communicate like you do, and that is you. So the goal here is to submit an outstanding essay in your voice. The minute an admissions committee starts to get suspicious that this essay wasn't written by you, it doesn't sound like you at all, that's going to cause you trouble. So make sure, it is so important that they hear from you. And I'm not giving you this isn't meant to be funny. Sit in front of a mirror if you wish and read out loud. Pretend you're talking to the committee. That's how you want your essay to sound. You want it to sound like you're talking to them in person. That is very, very helpful. And it increases your appeal to the admissions committee. Tip number 6. Here's what I just got ahead of myself. Read your first draft out loud. Read it, the whole thing. Read it out loud to yourself. And then decide, are there any changes I'd like to make? And I do this all the time with certain messages that I prepare. Not so much essays anymore. I'm pretty much done with that part of my career. But I send email messages all the time. And some of them I especially attend to. And I'll read them out loud just to be sure that I'm saying what I want to say, and have I caught any mistakes? Is there anything I want to change? So once you write that first draft, read it out loud. It'll make a big difference. Tip number 7, obviously, check for spelling and grammar. Now, in my years of reading and evaluating, as Dr. DeOris mentioned at the beginning of our time today, 125,000 applications. Most of them had at least one essay. Many of them had more. So I believe I'm not exaggerating when I say that I have probably read over 500,000 essays in my time, not counting those that I'm reading in the work I'm in now over these past 14 years. That would be another several thousand. My point is, I rarely read an essay that might be with perfect spelling or grammar. Sometimes somebody makes an invariable mistake. That's okay. 1 or 2 errors in an essay is expected. That is not the kiss of death. That's not going to cause you to be denied immediately. But an essay that is riddled with typos, with spelling errors, with grammatical, it's going to look like that was your first draft rather than the final draft. But they don't know that. They don't know that you this is where taking your time comes in to help and not rushing, so that you're sure you're sending the final essay. Because if you send one in that is not very well prepared, it doesn't look like you spent enough time, you'll be denied. They will not take any more time. So you check and make sure. Obviously, ask someone else to read the essay. Once you've done the read through, once you've finalized it the way you think it should be, get someone else's opinion. However, be very careful who you ask to do this and the advice you accept from these individuals. I'm going to give you a tip here. Having family members and close friends evaluate an essay is not a good idea. Now, obviously, they're very much in your court. They're rooting for you. They want you to succeed, but they are not admissions experts most of the time, and many times they are too close to you. They're too close to be able to step back and be objective and truly objective about what you're writing. This is some students will ask. I had one student tell me this was a collaboration between me and my parents. And you know what I said to that student? I said, then you need to go back to the drawing board and rewrite your essay. That's way too close. Be very, very, very careful. You want to get expert opinion on your essay from someone, ideally, who is an expert in the field of admissions and evaluating essays and has done this for a while. They don't have to do it as long as I have. I'm not saying that no one can do this unless they've been in admissions for 40 years. No, but just be careful. Please be careful who you ask and the advice you accept. And another tip here, if you ask too many people, you can get very confused because you could get one opinion about this and the exact opposite opinion over here. You want to be careful that you're not asking all these people to do. I would say 1 or 2 at the most, in addition to you, and they should not be your family members or close friends. Okay, if you have questions about any of these tips so far, we have 2 more yet before we move on to other parts of our presentation today. Please put those questions in the Q&A box. I hope we're getting some. All right, tip number 9. Once you have your final draft ready, please make sure to send it to the correct destination, to the correct institution. Oh my, I used to read essays for Columbia, and at the end of the essay, the applicant said, and that is why the University of Pennsylvania has always been my #1 choice. Well, clearly they were not looking at what they were doing and they made a mistake, but you know what? I had too many applications for Columbia. I had so many applications. And if that happened, that applicant was denied because obviously they weren't as interested in us. So I denied their application. Maybe they wanted to tell us Columbia was also at the top of their list, but I didn't read that. I've always wanted to go to the University of Pennsylvania. So please double check that the applicant, especially when you've been asked to say why you want to attend that institution, you better be sure that that essay is going to that institution and not another one. Okay. All right. Our last tip for essays. Here, I said it. I got ahead of myself. Be yourself. Please let them hear from you. There's only one of you. You're a very unique and special person. Even sometimes, some of us at this stage of life, when we're in high school and we're getting ready for our undergraduate career, maybe we don't have all as much confidence in ourselves yet. Some people, that takes a little longer, and that's okay. But let me tell you, from my experience, you are a special and unique person, and you are capable of doing undergraduate work your way, just for you. And so therefore, let them hear you. Let them, whatever your interaction, if it's on the phone, if it's email, if it's an essay, if it's your resume, if it's whatever it is, let them hear from you and be consistent about letting them hear from you. Please, please be yourself. Okay, we are now going to move to the second area I'd like to talk about today, and that is addressing possible weaknesses or less competitive aspects of your application. Here are some that often come to mind or are brought up to me when I'm working with undergraduate applicants. The first is grades. Someone's grades may not be as high as they would like them to be or as they could have been. And this is not the end of it all. It's not an automatic means of your being denied if this is the case, but you are going to need to address this. Now, we don't make excuses. If you heard me last time, you don't make excuses, but you do provide explanations. Perhaps you really just didn't apply yourself in your 9th standard or in your 10th standard, but things began to look up in the 11th and 12th standards. You should address that. The good news there is there's been improvement. There's been upward movement in your grades. So that's what you want to tell them and let them know. I understand that my grades maybe are not as high, but here's what I'd like to share with you. Give them an explanation because undoubtedly they're going to wonder about that. So you want to answer the question almost before they ask it. Similarly, let's say that you are required to submit the results of the SAT or the ACT, whichever, and you really tried, you prepared, you took the test several times. Some folks are not good test takers, and it has nothing to do with their intellectual skills. I'm one of those people. I never was a strong test taker. That was not my strong suit. My grades were good, but my test scores at the high school and at the college level, I took the SAT in high school. I took the GRE in college. It just didn't go as well for me. But that did not, I explained that in my application. I said, I prepared, I did my best. This is just not my strong suit for whatever reason. And I was admitted. They didn't deny me. There were other parts of my application, like my grades or other things that they took a look at and they really were interested in. So if you need to address this, please do so. Another area that is very much going on right now with applicants is the fact that they were not able to participate perhaps in as many extracurricular or volunteer activities, especially because of the COVID pandemic. This is very understandable. I have members of my family that I'm working with right now who are, one of them in particular, who's thinking of applying for college, and that was their experience. They were unable to do some of the things they would have normally done because everything's shut down. And as we mentioned in the last presentation on July 11th, extracurricular and volunteer activities are equally important in an undergraduate application and a graduate school one. This is a very critical area. So if you were not able to participate as you might have liked, there's nothing wrong with mentioning that and explaining. And then you could say this year, however, since things have gotten better, if that's the case for you, here's what I will be doing. That is absolutely an acceptable explanation for fewer extracurricular or volunteer activities. And another one that happens to some individuals, both in high school and college, perhaps something had led to an extended absence from school for you. I was speaking with a friend of mine just last week, and one of their children in the senior year of high school, in December of that year, they were going to graduate the following June. They were just about halfway through their senior year of high school. They began experiencing debilitating migraine headaches that caused them to have to lay flat. They couldn't move. This went on for months. It was very, very serious. And they were not able to finish their senior year in high school. They had to finish it later on. Now, this is rare, but if something has happened, again, where you had an extended absence, anything that you believe the admissions committee is going to ask you about, then answer it ahead of time. Now, keep in mind, don't go overboard with this. Don't think that every single thing. I'm talking something major, lower grades, lower test scores, fewer extracurriculars, and a major absence, something pretty major. That's what you want to address, and that's what you want to explain here. All right, so now we're going to move from, we've talked about essays, we talked about addressing some potential weaknesses in the application. Let's talk about the application interview. Many of you could be asked to do an interview with the admissions committee. If this happens, the very first thing you want to do is to prepare. Don't just go into this without any preparation. If it's in person or even if it's virtual, have your resume right with you. Have it there. Before you get to the interview, practice. Ask someone to help. I have that in my tips here, but I'll just say it now. Make sure you've practiced what you're going to say if asked certain questions. There's a wealth of information out there. We have it available. I'm sure Astute has it available. What are the top questions most undergraduate applicants are asked in an interview? And practice those answers. Please dress appropriately, even if this is a virtual interview. Some applicants think that if they're interviewing online, they could show up in a sweatshirt and a pair of blue jeans. Oh, no. This is a professional interview. So if they say that the dress requirement is formal, for men, that would mean what I'm wearing today, a shirt and a tie, a formal attire, maybe a suit jacket. They may ask you to wear that. If they say business casual, then you don't have to wear a tie, men. And for women, this is a little bit easier in terms of the fashion that you might wear. But the point is, you need to dress appropriately, okay? Do not dress down. Dress the way they instruct you to. That's an immediate indication of something about you. If you show up very poorly dressed, that already gives the interviewer a negative impression. Please use good eye contact. If you saw me talking with you today and I was talking like this the whole time, I was looking down at my desk, I never looked at you, all you could see is my head. How would that make you feel? Or if I was looking up in the air or I was looking over here? No, when you're in an interview with someone, now you're not staring at them and like a zombie, but you are looking at them. You are especially when you're speaking with them. If they ask you a question and you're responding, look in the camera. Look into the camera, because for you, that's where that person is. So make sure good eye contact tends to convey a level of confidence and ease. Not that you won't be nervous. I'm sure we all are in an interview, but good eye contact helps to convey an image that you are confident and that you're ready to address the questions you're going to be asked. Speaking of that, by all means, answer the questions, but don't ramble. Don't take 5 minutes to answer a question. That's way too long, way too long. You may only have 30 minutes with this interviewer, and you want to give them the opportunity to ask you as many questions as they can so that they can get to know you. So this is where practicing comes in. I've often done practice interview sessions with my applicants, and sometimes I'll stop them and I'll say, okay, wait a minute. I think that's where you ought to stop here. We don't want to go on any further. You want to make sure you answer the question, but just don't go on and on and on. This is not as much that you want to let them ask you as many questions as they can. Number 5, be confident again, but not arrogant. We talked about this last time. There is a huge difference between confidence and arrogance. If you want to ask me about that at the end of the presentation, I'll share more with you. But your goal is to be confident. Yes, you have some accomplishments. Yes, you believe you have some qualities and skills that they would find appealing as a student at their university. And you can talk about that, but you never want to come across as though you think you're the greatest thing in the world. That will immediately turn them off and most likely lead to your being denied admission. Number 6, keep your cool no matter what happens. Let's say that all of a sudden you swallow and you start coughing profusely. Something gets caught in your throat and you just start coughing and it's hard for you to talk. That's very embarrassing. I know that's very uncomfortable, but just calm down. Maybe they'll get you a glass of water. Maybe they'll get you a lozenge for your throat. It'll be okay. And the way you handle that shows them a little bit about who you are. If that you don't fall apart, you don't get all upset. You just say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm having a problem." Or let's say they ask you a question and you do not know the answer. You absolutely do not know how to answer this question. My advice, do not try to pretend that you have an answer if you don't. You can tell them, I honestly don't have an answer for that question right now, but I'll get back to you tomorrow. If I may have your email address, I will send you my answer. Now, that happens very rarely. It's very rare. Well, this wasn't planned, but look what happened. I got a little air in my throat and I'm going right on, right? That's what you want to do. I promise that wasn't planned. But anyway, if it's very rare that you'll be asked a question you can't answer. But if it does happen, that's what you do. Don't get miffed. Don't get upset. Don't say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. I can't believe that happened." Oh, no. You keep your cool. You keep your confidence. And that's what I'm talking when I give you this point. Let them see that you do, that you're able to handle things that might happen unexpectedly, that you're still okay with that. Number 7, toward the end of the interview, you may be asked if you have any questions for the interviewer. Please do not ask more than 2 unless they ask you for that. If they say, "Do you have any more questions?" Yes, but have at least 3 to 4 questions ready to ask if you're given. You may not be given this opportunity, but if you are, make sure you have some questions ready and only ask 2 unless they invite you to ask more. Our time is running by here and I still have another point. So last tip for interviews, be sure to send a thank you note or message to your interviewer. If, like as I said, if you had a question you didn't know how to answer, this is the place to put it. Put it right there in the thank you note. But make sure to thank them for taking the time to interview with you and let them know if your interest in the institution has even increased as the result of that interview. Be sure to let them know that. All right. I'm going to cover our final point fairly quickly here because it's way ahead of when this is going to happen. But I do want to give a couple of tips here. If you happen to be waitlisted or denied admission, the first point, this is not personal. This is not in any way a critique of your ability to do undergraduate academic work. Not at all. It is not that. In many cases, it's because the institution only has so many seats and they have far more applications. This is what I dealt with at Columbia, at the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago, at Northwestern. We often had, at Booth, some years we would have 5,000 applications and I could bring in 480 students or 500 students. That was it. And 90% of the applicant pool was very qualified. It was a very, very difficult decision. So this is not personal. And if you would like to, always request feedback. Always ask them, is there anything you can tell me about your decision to deny me or wait? If they're now, they may not always do this. If they do, the last thing you want to do is argue with them. Do not argue if they're trying to help you. Just say thank you. And if there's a way you can respond, do so as quickly as possible. If you're waitlisted, please remember, that means you're one step away from being admitted, not one step away from being denied. you would not be placed on a waiting list if they were not very interested in you. So while that's disappointing, that means you're still in contention, and how you handle yourself will very much play a role in whether or not you move forward. If you're denied, think about reapplying. Applicants, especially if it's your first choice and you want to try again, that's what I did with Northwestern. And don't assume that because you were denied the first time, you're going to be denied the second time. Oftentimes, second-time applicants get in. That's what happened to me. And not only did Northwestern admit me the second time for my PhD, they also gave me 1 full year of coursework coming in. They brought me in as a second-year student. I was given the whole first year free. They waived it. So don't ever assume that a waitlist or deny decision is the end of the road. It absolutely is not. All right. In closing, just a few tips on this part of the application process. Let the admissions committee hear whose voice. Remember, this is your application and they need to hear your voice. Number 2, be ready to discuss less competitive credentials if you need to. You are not alone. There's no perfect application ever. I've never seen a perfect application in all of my years. There are outstanding applications, but no perfect ones. Number 3, remember the interview is so critical. It can make or break your application. How you come across, confidently, but not arrogantly, good eye contact, answering questions, but not rambling, being prepared, dressing appropriately, saying thank you. This can make a difference. And lastly, being waitlisted or denied is not the end. It's not what you may have wanted initially, but it is not the end. Okay, in our final few minutes, just let me share quickly again about working with, and by the way, I hope your questions, I see we have questions. That's excellent. I hope we're going to get some more if you have them. Ms. Deborah and I've been working with Astute for many years. Ms. Deborah has joined us this year. We have had a very, very excellent association with Tushar and his team. Those of you who are working with the Astute Academy, I don't have to say this, but I'm going to anyway. You have a phenomenal resource. It's the best in India, bar none. I can say that 100% with confidence. You have found the exact perfect opportunity to receive assistance with your educational goals and objectives. We've had a very high acceptance rate with our students, well over 97, 98% of those. In fact, Tushar may choose to share with you what the percentage is of his candidates and applicants with whom we've worked that have been admitted. It's been a very successful collaboration. We're able to mentor as early as the 9th standard. We can start help. If you would like to have us work with you before you get to the 12th standard or the end of your 11th standard, and you want us to kind of provide some mentoring, we would be more than willing to do that. We'd be most happy to do that. We just, Ms. Deborah found an article here in US News about starting the college search that she thought would be very helpful for you. So we've added it here, and this will be available. I believe Astute makes these webinars available for you. So you might want to take a look at this. It's a very, very helpful article on starting your college search. And lastly, as I mentioned, we can assist you with school search, resume prep, essay, recommender strategy, everything. We can help you. In fact, one of the things I've most often done for Astute are providing short lists of institutions to consider. But in light of my earlier comment about research, do you know how many institutions I usually provide to an applicant to take a look at? Between 35 and 40, not just 7 or 8, a much larger number. We can do that for you. And it's been an honor to work with Dr. Dioris and his team. So we look forward to having the opportunity to hopefully work with some of you this year. If there's any way that we can, we welcome that opportunity. Okay, it's now time for some questions. They're coming in here, and this is wonderful. I'm so glad. So, but before that, let me close. We wish you so much success in your educational and professional career. Most of all, we wish you every continue. My educational journey, Ms. Deborah's, were outstanding. They changed our lives. They opened doors intellectually, educationally, and career-wise for us. They made a difference. And that's what we hope for you as well. Dr. DeOris, thank you again ever so much for giving me this privilege to meet with you and some of your audience today. I will now turn the microphone back to you, and we'll see what questions I can answer this morning. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much for the excellent session. And this writing essays is going to be the most critical part for the admissions. And many universities are asking even 5, 6, or even 7 essays. I was in one of the applications for University of California, Berkeley, and for scholarships, they were asking for around 20 to 22 essays to be written. And so many questions they are asking. There may be a short essays of maybe even 100 words or 200 words, but the universities are wanting to know you. And that is why, as Dr. Donald Martin says, it is you need to showcase you. They need to know you. They need to know you through the essays part of it. It's really great. Let's see what now the questions are there.
Okay.
So the first question, can I send the same essay to all universities by editing just the name?
That's a great question. For those of you that would be using the common application, which many undergraduate institutions will accept as the initial application to their program, yes, you can use the same personal statement or essay for that application. However, many undergraduate schools, once they get that from you, they may reach out and ask you to provide what is called a supplemental set of essays just for them. Of course, then you need to write those essays just for that institution. But the initial essay, if you're using the common application, can be the same. Yes, good question.
Yeah. If I get a less test score, can I retake the test and submit the upgraded score?
I believe what this applicant is asking is if they test once and it doesn't go as well, can they test again and submit the second report? Yes, they can. And the other thing I would say is, in some cases, if you take the test a little bit closer to the time that you apply, that you submit your common application, let's say, you can ask the institution if you can still submit the score even though you've already sent your initial application in. And some of them will take a second test score even after the first application deadline, because in most cases, they may not have started to evaluate applications yet. But yes, that you absolutely can. I actually believe you should take the test at least twice if you need to. I don't recommend taking it too many more times. Some applicants take it 5 times, 10 times. The scores don't change all that much, and actually that makes you look desperate. But I do recommend, if it doesn't go well the first time, try again. Yes.
Yeah. Does the essay need to include why am I applying to a specific program?
Very good question. For the common application, of course, you would not be talking about that. But when you get, when some of those institutions contact you after that, and they send you additional essays, one of them may very well be, to use the institution 𝐂𝐤 just mentioned, why do you want to study at the University of California at Berkeley? That could be a question. And yes, if it is, and by the way, if you are asked why you want to study at a particular institution, you need to give them concrete reasons about that institution, ideally that do not apply to any other school you're applying to. Sometimes applicants make the mistake of saying, when they say, why do I want to go to your school? They'll say, you have wonderful faculty, or you have a beautiful campus, or, well, every institution has wonderful faculty and a beautiful campus. That doesn't tell me anything. If you're asked why you want to attend UC Berkeley, you better have some very specific reasons about UC Berkeley, not their ranking, not their faculty, not because your father told you should apply or your teacher told. No. That means nothing. You need to give them specific reasons about their program that tend not to apply to any other. That was a great question.
Sorry. What is the difference between personal statement and essay?
That's a great question. It's so confusing sometimes. People are asked to submit statements, personal statements, statement of purpose, academic purpose statement, essay. It almost becomes so confusing. In reality, sometimes a personal statement and an essay are actually the same. It's just that they are called something different by the institution. So basically, at the end of the day, I would say that this particular part of the application you're asked to submit is an essay of some kind. It may simply be called an essay, but it may also be called a lot of those other things. But at the end of the day, they are all essays. I'm so glad you asked. That's a very good question.
There are multiple essays to be submitted. So can we predict the essay topics? Do all universities have the same topics?
Oh, wonderful. You're once again, Dr. Diores, your audience is asking such great questions. The questions are not always the same for each institution. They may be similar, but they may not be identical. So again, you need to be very careful when you're assessing what you're asked to write, that you're giving that institute. Let me give you an example. Let's say that one institution asks you to talk about what you believe you would most contribute to their campus. Okay, so you have that. The other might say, what are 2 reasons why we should admit you? Well, that means for that question, you can only give 2 things. For the other question, you might be able to give 3 or 4. I wouldn't do more than 4 ever. You don't want to come across as arrogant. But again, if they only ask you for 2, that's what you give them. So it could be similar. They won't be identical, but there could be some similarity. But your goal, your strategy is always to make sure your essay exactly addresses what that institution asked you to address.
Yeah. And the universities are very innovative, actually, way of asking. And my daughter last year was applying, and MIT asked, MIT is one of the great university, students may be knowing, they asked to send 2 jokes. Please write a jokes, 2 genuine jokes you create and write it. It's a very innovative.
Yes.
You want to check it, something different. It is not a traditional type of the questions. And
absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's very true.
Yeah. Another, can we use professional tools like while writing essays, like plagiarism, spell check, or anything else?
I would answer that. That's a great question. I'd answer that in 2 ways. Yes, you could use spell check or some other tools that way. But what you don't want to do is ever use some sort of essay writing service or have someone else write that essay. That immediately, irrespective of the ethical implications of that. Quite frankly, that's unethical by the standards of the United States. Our expectation is you write your essays. Now, spell check, all of that, that's absolutely fine. Having another person take a look at what you've written and offer some insight, yes. But beyond that, this needs to be from you.
Another question, how it is important for the Indian students to communicate in English confidently during the interview? Many students may not have the great English fluency.
Excellent question. Well, in all honesty, sometimes interviews are requested for that very purpose, not to punish an applicant their level of English speaking ability, because it would be absolutely dreadful to admit a candidate to come to an institution where English is the first language and the language in which everything is taught, and have them not be able to do as well. That would be cruel to that student. So the interview is for the purpose of determining someone's level of, sometimes I should say, an interview with an international applicant could be for that purpose. And so, to be honest with you, if you don't believe your English speaking skills are quite good enough for you to succeed, maybe you need to take an extra year and focus on improving those skills before you apply. There's nothing wrong with that. We did turn down applicants at Columbia, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and Wheaton because their English skills were not good enough. They weren't bad applicants. We were thrilled to know them, but we felt, and we would tell them, if you can improve on your English and reapply, we'd like to meet with you again. And many times they did, and they got admitted. So yes, this is important that you demonstrate that you have the ability to handle a rigorous academic coursework and extracurricular and social involvement outside the classroom with a fair degree of ease.
Yeah, that's very critical. So another question, what are the parameters for evaluating a ASA? How the admissions committee evaluates the ASAs?
Well, that's a great question. Now, obviously, I can't know how each admissions committee does this individually. They all have their own unique way. But that said, I'll tell you how I try to evaluate essays. First and foremost, did I get a sense that I was hearing from the applicant? Did I get a sense that this was that applicant truly speaking? That from other parts of the application, short essays, resume, other things, that this was the voice of the applicant. Second, did they answer our questions? Did they actually answer them, and did they do it in the order in which we asked them to? Thirdly, did they stick with the word limit we requested? And lastly, and most importantly, what was the content of that essay? Was it compelling? Was it persuasive? Was it something that caused me to believe, okay, this person knows about Columbia. This person knows about the Chicago Booth School of Business. They truly know about it, and they believe they're a match. They've answered the questions we've asked fully, completely, persuasively, and they did it, as I said, in the order that we did, with the proper word limit and in their voice. That person got a pretty high mark for their essays.
Yeah, another question, what should be essay structure? Like how, what, or why?
I'm not sure I fully understand. I believe you're asking about the structure of the essay. Again, if this doesn't help you, please reach out to Dr. Diores and the Astute team, or you're welcome to, and they may reach out to me. But at any rate, in terms of the structure, the structure is a formal essay with excellent grammar and one that flows logically through the questions you've been asked to address. There's an idea that you're following the directive that you were given in that essay instruction.
Do we have the choice to pick up the essay topic?
I'm sorry, do you have what to pick up the topic?
The choices of the essay topics.
Oh, great question. Sometimes you will be given a choice of topics. Sometimes they'll say, here are 3 topics. We would like you to address one of them. In other instances, you will not be given a choice. They will simply say, if you submit the common application with that essay, and then institutions reach out to you for additional essays, they may just say, here are 2 essays we want you to answer, and you have no choice. You have to answer those 2. It's up to the institution.
I think we have covered one more. How long should the essay be on an average? But that is based on the application. Yeah. How long should be the essay? Yeah.
Yeah. The length of an essay should be spelled out to you right there when you're reading the question or question. They will tell you right then and there, 300 words, 400, 500. If they don't, if there's no instruction for a basic undergraduate essay, my recommendation is no more than 500 words. But 99% of the time, they're going to tell you how many words they want in the essay.
Yeah, that covers all the question. So really, thank you for asking all the questions. It was all the questions were great, and really appreciate you all asking for a question. One last question, we'll take one question as came.
Okay.
I never had computer science or IT as a subject in my high school, but I have taken coding classes and currently taking the course from the Harvard. Is there any chance for me to get accepted in computer science course as an undergraduate student?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You know, I'm so glad we took time for that question, because most undergraduate applicants don't have to declare their major until after they've been in their program for they've been at the institution for 1 or 2 years. They don't have to do that right away. So you have some time to determine whether or not you would like to pursue computer science as your undergraduate major. And with some of the additional courses you've just taken, along with some of the requirements you would be asked to fulfill at your institution, I see no reason why you couldn't do that. Absolutely. That's a great question.
Yeah, and in the many universities in the application, they say undecided as one of the option. Okay, I'm entering to undergraduate, I don't know what I want to do it. Still, it is okay. So as Dr. Donald Martin says, so it's very much open to that. So thank you very much, Dr. Donald Martin, for taking such an excellent and answering all the questions. I really appreciate all the students in joining into that. We will definitely get more opportunities to interact. This is a kind of ongoing the webinar series, and we will try to go as much depth into each aspects of the profile building activities as well as the application processes. And we do hope all the students really have a great admissions and make a great career. Thank you very much, Dr. Donald Martin, again, and Deborah, for joining this session, and really appreciate. Thank you very much.